We are excited to welcome Lars Mytting now. Lars is one of Norway's best-selling writers and is the author of tonight's pick, The Night of the Scourge, which is set in the world of the Reindeer Hunter and Sister Bells, as well as the 16 Trees of the Salma and the Norwegian Wood. His books, which have sold more than 2 million copies in 20 languages, have won the Norwegian Booksellers Prize, been longlisted for the Dublin Literary Award, and been selected as a Waterstones Book of the Month. We are delighted to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us, Lars.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Andrew. And I will just also add my welcome, Lars, that it is just fabulous to have you back and to be in conversation with you and to think about today a little bit, to hear a bit from you about the third and the final volume of the Sister Bells trilogy. And I will confess the three of them live on my bookshelf that I look at every day. And so these texts have lived in our consciousness, and I know for many of the people joining us today too, in their consciousness over the last several years. So thank you and congratulations on the conclusion of this project. Have you been surprised by the reactions to the release of the third volume?
Well, I had an impression based on the response of the first two books. So I knew that people were waiting, and also I had fun of asking people what they were anticipating, what do you believe will happen, and but it was quite obvious from the start that we would proceed to World War II in Norway. So. But I think that the response and the feeling that the readers had that delighted me the most was that they seemed to somehow return to a place that they were familiar with, a place they had known, and a place that where they knew the people. So it was almost like a shift from fiction into reality. So they were just waiting for me, say, as the chronicler of this place, to return and to say, well, this is what happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the response here in Norway was overwhelming and very, very good. I was also delighted to see that so many people started all over again and read book 1 and then 2 before they began on volume 3. And but it was also a moment of sadness for me, really, to depart from this place, because it's been my life for 8 years. I've been fully immersed and absorbed in this fictional world I started before I was 50, and now I'm well past 50. So here I am coming into this strange world again. So yes, it was very odd, really.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible to think about the idea of time, right? In this. So you reflected on your own sense of time and how much this world has been part of your life. And then between the 3 volumes, we get this incredible span of Norwegian history. And engagement from the 1880s all the way through World War II. And that's a really interesting how much Norway has changed, or how much Norway changed, in that multiple decades span, but less than a century. I mean, it was very rapid development. So as you think about yourself living with this fictional world for the last about 10 years, has your approach to storytelling changed, or your approach to Butangen, or your thoughts about all of these incredible characters, and maybe the themes or settings you explore?
Well, I had an idea from the start, that I would follow sort of the change in mentality, and also to follow the technical developments in Norway, and also how the mentality changes together with the shift in living standards and in the various mechanical aids that makes our life so much easier. Yeah. But what surprised me the most, I think, was to see that the more modern the world became for the people at Butangen, the more they also had a longing back to the spiritual and the unexplainable, and the desire to understand the eerie connections from the past. So, and I was also surprised when writing it that I discovered so many echoes from the past, from echoes from Volume 1, and also the earliest stories in the book that takes place in year 1500 and year 1600, and how many of these links that sort of came out and sort of wanted to appear and be part of the book in a very natural way. And it's not that I had to invent it; they just came up and reconnected to the story that starts in 1936, but somehow shows so many mysterious links back to
yeah.
especially the first book, and also the stories with the Heckne sisters from the year 1600.
Yeah. Well, and that embodies in young Astrid, right? And her character. And so thinking about that kind of tension about her as a character in the third volume that has to navigate both a world that is shaped by these deep-rooted traditions and kind of the pristineness of Butangen, right? And I think that idea of uplifting the technological integrations, but how we confront those when they're in our space and integrated into our lives. When you thought about setting young Astrid in this time of 1936 and World War II, how did you approach developing her character?
Well, I had images and lots of stories from the war, because my grandmother and her friends. My grandma was born in 1903 and lived through the war, and there were so many stories from that time that they were telling each other that I would eavesdrop in and listen to when I was a kid. But I really felt that it was undercommunicated, the role of women in the war, and especially not the military role, but the role in the resistance and also in the intelligence services. And what surprised me was that we had an organization in Norway that was one of the most efficient in whole Europe, that consisted of people, and a lot of them women, that were spying on the Germans and were delivering very, very accurate intelligence first to Sweden and then back to London. And that was the foundation of many large military operations. And I had, or in my neighborhood, there were two sisters that were, and they have the surname of Messelt, and we meet a Messelt woman in Volume 2, Christine.
Yeah.
That's one of the many honors in the book to people that actually lived. They are homages to them. And they did a tremendous job by helping refugees across the border, and had a very, very dangerous life. But they are mentioned just by 2 or 3 lines in the written history of the war. So, but I had the honor to meet them when I was a child. So it was more or less, say, a creation of my imagination to see these old women as young girls or young women at the time, and I would go to the places where they lived and try to reimagine it. And gender didn't matter much when I did that. It could be a man or it could be a woman, but it was getting into the extraordinary tension and the danger that they faced. So. And that's part of the storytelling work, to sort of imagine myself that I am the character and I am facing their challenges and sort of move the danger into my own body and write from that viewpoint.
Wow. To have firsthand source material is an incredible gift. I mean, to have interacted with those people in your own childhood, that's an incredible, and young adulthood, that's an incredible gift there.
Yes, and one can only wish that I had listened even more or had been alive. But yes, but I also had the honor of talking to the children and having them to retell the stories about their mother. And I also met people that were on the wrong side of the war. 2 or 3 of them are still alive. One of them was only 17 when he volunteered from the German side, and he was still alive. So I also got to meet and speak with him 3 times. So and that's equally important, I feel.
Yeah. Well, there's an incredible body of material coming out of Norway right now about World War II and about this era, and trying to encapsulate some of these stories, right? And to give voice to some of these stories, especially what you're doing here, give voice to stories that haven't necessarily been told yet from that perspective. And so that's such an interesting component of the, we've seen the movie Report from Number 24 that has been, is on Netflix now. And we've had many of our Bokprat participants that have been, that have lifted that up as an interesting piece.
That's a wonderful story, really. I even had the honor of meeting him a few years ago. So he was a magnificent man and very, very important for how we shaped our military system in the 1950s and 60s. He was vital for that as well.
Yeah. So the reverberations continue, which is, speaks again to kind of the integrative nature of time, that time is not just broken up into small periods, right? That everything has an influence, and everything is tied beautifully. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one of the most interesting things when you mentioned time and influence was the shift that we see if you read the 3 books together, because in volume 1 we meet where we are in 1880. We meet a Germany, which is Norway's absolutely best friend, and is also the rescuer for Norway, and helps us to rescue the cultural heritage. It's the Germans who save our stave churches and our culture. And then throughout volume 2, but especially volume 3, we see the shift that comes, where they, interestingly enough, uses the links between ancient Norway and ancient Germany, which shared so many parallels and myths and legend. That very material is used, say, in reverse to create the foundations of the Nazi regime. And so the Germany that we meet in book 3 is, say, founded on a 180 degrees shift into a lie of the ties and the culture that we meet in volume 1. And that is, I think, one of the most interesting parts of what happened in the 1930s, how they took a part of their history and spun a great number of lies to it that created the ideology of Nazism. So when book 3 ends, everything has changed, and Germany and Norway have become enemies. And our previous enemy, which was England in colonial times, Norway and England were not the best friends at all. That changes in 1945.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I guess this it's fascinating how you talk and speak to the moment too of the inversion of narrative, right? That we create narratives and we create truth, and there are truths, and then how narratives get used, maybe in false ways to create a world, or to create an ideology, or to create. And I want to ask about Kai Schweigart here too before we're done. But I do think it's interesting, and I would love to hear your thoughts on, the novel is set in an incredible time of social and political upheaval and economic upheaval too, but it resonates so much with so many modern parallels. We've experienced a pandemic in the 10 years that you've been working on this trilogy, societal crises. When you were writing this, were you thinking about these parallels to the contemporary time? Or another way maybe to think about this is, how do you see the history speaking to the present moment?
Well, I clearly see it as a neighbor to Russia. Immediately, I must say, and that was it wasn't a part of the writing that I wanted to display it, because I only show what happened in the 1930s. But the very idea that that was the foundation in Germany was that there was somehow a historical past that was granted to a country by the gods or larger powers or whatever. And sort of that defined the borders and the size of a nation, and that is exactly what Russia tries to do. In the same way as the Germans did, they try to define a greater Russia that consists of borders that they had in about year 1300 or year 1400. And I mean, you can unfold such borders and find whatever truth you like, but the narrative and that is used is about the same. It's a narrative that larger powers grant you the right to invade other people. And I just wanted to display the nature of these lies and how easy it is to build them. Because if you get into a blurred past where not everything is clear, a blurred past where that you cannot turn into the books and find the exact history or the exact foundation of it, then it's very, very hard to utter resistance to it. Very few people will be able to do it. So it's a matter of that sort of false storytelling that I simply want to display.
Yeah. So, are there any characters then that you would recommend that can give us any guideposts to navigate the current moment? I mean, is there a character in Volume 3 who you believe is kind of giving us some tips and guiding us to the present?
Well, even if we mention so much about history and the foundation, we shouldn't forget that this is at heart a novel about people and their extraordinary devotions to each other, love and about hatred and about the superstition and the belongings to the past. But I'd say that first and foremost, this is Kai Schweigart's grand novel. We meet him, the preacher, that we meet as a young man in Volume 1, and as a middle-aged but very changed man in Volume 2. Here he's become very, very old, but he is perhaps even wilder and rougher than ever. And I feel that his guideline about trying to be the torch for the truth, no matter what happens and no matter what it will cost you. That is perhaps what he does. as a chronicler, I'm very, very proud of what Kai Schweigård does in this book. He holds a magnificent speech in 1940.
Yeah.
And he really towards the end, when the largest sacrifices has to be made, I'm really, really proud of him. But and also, of course, of the younger Astrid, the granddaughter of Astrid that we meet in volume 2, and the similarities and the echoes between those two persons is something that's also very dear to my storytelling heart.
So, is there any chance for a 4th volume?
I don't think so, because I don't want to. When we look at series on television, and they always want to have a prequel or a sequel, but I don't want to rob the reader for a good ending. Something that ends and ties everything together has a very, very significant role in my storytelling, so that when it ends, it shall end. But there is a twist to it all the time. I feel that the ending here sort of connects to what happened in volume 1, so that instead of forming a linear line and it begins here and stops here, it sort of creates a circle, so that where this book actually begins or ends, it's harder to. But yes, it ends.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, Lars, thank you so much for your time. We so appreciate it. There's so much more we could talk about, but we're absolutely respectful of your time and busy schedule. And we just appreciate always continued dialogue and conversation about these incredible texts. What a gift. I've taught volume 1 3 times now to my students, and every time they find something new, it appeals to a generation of 18 to 22-year-olds that gets them to think about tradition, modernity, time. One course was on architecture, so they loved thinking about Kai Schweigård and his perspective in volume 1. And so these books continue to have incredible resonance, both so glad to hear in Norway, but also here in the United States. So thank you for the continued conversation and dialogue.
Well, thank you. And I must say, I really, really appreciate the US readers. From no other country I've received so many and so heartfelt feedback on emails and on Facebook Messenger. And I believe it's perhaps because this is stories about so many people's grandparents and grandparents and their life in Norway and the mentality of the time. So, I'm very, very grateful for the reception and the readings in the US.
Wonderful. Well, we'll make sure it continues.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.